One government letter and 90 minutes against an AI model that hundreds of millions of users had been trusting for just 3 days. Then, the most capable model in the Western world went dark, but this wasn't a cyber attack, it was political. Then, 2,000 miles south of Washington, one of the world's busiest shipping choke points is buckling at the very same moment another slowly reopens. Coming up on Unbreakable Ventures, why a single Commerce Department letter pulled a frontier AI model offline worldwide, and how a blocked strait is straining a drought-prone canal. Plus our quick-fire round of 5 emerging threats you may have missed this fortnight. It's Thursday the 18th of June, and we're covering the world's global threats over the last fortnight, so grab a coffee and let's get into it. Welcome to Unbreakable Ventures. I'm Ollie Law, and you are listening to our fortnightly risk update where we dive into emerging and current risks from around the world, focusing on some big stories and some you may have missed. We use the categories from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report to simplify the threats we're monitoring, but we also do some deep dives and interviews with industry peers. Today, I come to you from the wonderful, extravagant United Arab Emirates. I've been meaning to get over here for many years, and given that my colleague Myma lives and works here in Dubai, it was an easy decision to get a flight and visit. I've only been here 24 hours, but I can already see the impacts of the conflict only a few hundred kilometers away. Fortunately, the moment I boarded my flight back in Kuala Lumpur, the news announced a legitimate peace deal between the United States and Iran. Impeccable timing, really. But what is clear is that the city is running at maybe around 20% of its usual tourism capacity, maybe less. My hotel, as wonderful as it is to feel the exclusivity, is only running about 10% capacity. That said, businesses are still operating. There's optimism here and an urge to get things moving again. But we're monitoring the deeper realities that key industries need to get through. The airlines, the supply chain and shipping, the international schools, the expat communities, they will never be the same. So, for the next 5 days, I'm going to interview and meet with some professionals and entrepreneurs here to get the real, on-ground reality of the threat landscape in Dubai. So stay tuned, stay subscribed, and our team will get some updates out soon. What happens when a software your business deeply depends on can be switched off at any moment by a government directive? That's a threat so unlikely, most weren't putting it on their risk register. But this week, that changed. On Friday the 12th of June, at 5:21 p.m. Washington time, Anthropic received a letter from US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The letter ordered the company to suspend access to 2 of its most capable models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, for any foreign national, whether inside the United States or anywhere else in the world. That included Anthropic's own non-citizen employees. Anthropic was given roughly 90 minutes to comply. The letter, crucially, did not specify the national security concern, because Anthropic has no way to filter foreign nationals from US users in real time across AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Foundry, Snowflake, and its own APIs. The only compliant path was a full global shutdown. Fable 5 launched only 3 days earlier, and according to Anthropic, already serving hundreds of millions of users, went offline within hours. So why does this matter, and why does the cause look political rather than purely technical? The trigger was reportedly a warning from Amazon CEO Andy Jassy. Amazon, worth noting, is one of Anthropic's largest investors. Researchers at Amazon used Fable 5 to extract information related to cyber attacks. They flagged this to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who took it to the White House. From there, the Commerce Department moved. Anthropic publicly disputes the framing. The company says the jailbreak in question is narrow and non-universal. They reviewed the same demonstration and found it surfaces only a small number of previously known minor vulnerabilities. And critically, they've stated publicly that the same outputs can be produced by OpenAI's GPT 5.5 without any jailbreak at all. If a narrow technique that exists in competitor models justifies a full commercial recall, every frontier deployment in the industry should theoretically halt. So that's the technical picture. But the political picture matters more. This is not Anthropic's first conflict with Washington. In July last year, the company refused a $200 million Department of Defense contract because the Pentagon wanted Claude available for autonomous weapons systems and mass domestic surveillance. In February this year, the White House ordered all federal agencies to stop using Anthropic models. In early March, the Pentagon designated Anthropic a supply chain risk, a classification never previously applied to a US company. Anthropic is challenging that in federal court, and a judge has already issued a preliminary injunction. Friday's directive came from a different agency under a different statute, but produced the same result. When the mechanism changes but the pressure doesn't, you're likely watching a cycle of retaliation, not isolated enforcement. Worth noting too that Anthropic filed a confidential IPO prospectus earlier this month with a $47 billion revenue run rate and a valuation near $965 billion. The timing of this shutdown is at minimum commercially convenient for somebody, so who should be paying attention to this? If you've built products on a single AI model, a vendor outage can now halt your operations overnight. This was already the reality before any government directive. It's why a growing number of developers and IT leaders are pushing for open weight or self-hosted models that can't be remotely cut off. If someone in your organization has suggested this, now is the time to take it seriously. Global enterprises need to listen closely too. The directive applied to foreign national staff regardless of physical location. That means multinational teams can lose critical tools because of what passport they hold. Your tooling decisions now carry geopolitical and compliance exposure they didn't carry 6 months ago. Security and engineering teams, regulated firms in healthcare, finance, and compliance all face the same exposure. A model lawful today can vanish tomorrow if Washington sees it as too risky to national security. So, what should your team actually do? Start by mapping every product, workflow, and tool that leans on a single model or vendor. Document your fallback options and switching costs now. A sudden suspension should be an inconvenience, not an existential shock. For most businesses currently using AI, that's still the reality. The bigger issue this story exposes is political authority over systems we'd previously assumed were exempt from it. Maintain multi-model redundancy so no single provider becomes a hard dependency. Know exactly where AI lives in your stack. For mission-critical work, assess open weight or self-hosted models as backups. They can't be remotely disabled by a third party, and at sufficient scale, they can also bring costs down, though small and mid-volume deployments often see the inverse. And build continuity into your contracts. Negotiate advanced notice clauses, exit support, and remedies, covering sudden loss of access driven by regulation. Force majeure clauses written before this week are very likely now insufficient. The lesson is simple. In an AI-driven business, your biggest single point of failure may not be technical, it may be political.
You are listening to Unbreakable Ventures, a threat intelligence publication by FixInc. Subscribe today via unbreakableventures.com to receive free resource and deep dives from industry experts. Unbreakableventures.com, where resilience is about community and communication. Subscribe today.
Before we move on to our second threat update, we're sharing our quick-fire emerging threats we've picked up throughout the week. These will be noteworthy stories we think you should know about, but less detailed than our two core threats analysed. CrowdStrike's 2026 Technology Threat Landscape Report, released June 9th, warns that China-linked groups accounted for more than 58% of all state-sponsored cyber attacks targeting the technology sector over the year to March. CrowdStrike named 5 specific groups, including Murky Panda, whose password spraying campaign alone compromised more than 340 US-based entities. The focus is AI assets, and the goal is clear: steal capabilities faster than they can be built. With tech now the most targeted sector globally, firms should harden access controls and watch closely for persistent intrusions. Microsoft cut off access to dozens of open source projects hosted on GitHub, a code sharing platform it owns. Hackers had injected password-stealing malware into projects connected to Microsoft's cloud service Azure, as well as developer tools used with Claude Code, Gemini's command line interface, and VS Code. At least 70 projects were disabled during the cleanup. This is the second such breach in weeks, suggesting Microsoft's first cleanup failed to remove the attackers. These are supply chain attacks, hitting code used across many products. Rotate your credentials and audit your dependencies. New research from risk management firm Optro, published through MIT Sloan Middle East, found that 73% of UAE organizations are confident they can meet their recovery objectives during a major disruption. But the reality doesn't align. When disruption actually hit, 62% failed to recover within those objectives, and roughly 35% exceeded their recovery targets by more than double. Only 19% have a formal disaster recovery plan, compared to a global average of 31%. Confidence is not the same thing as capability. Run independent readiness audits and rehearse realistic scenarios, rather than relying on assumptions. A new QBE insurance study of Australian businesses with 100 to 2,000 employees finds that 26% of those who experienced a cyber incident in the past year believe AI was used against them. That includes AI-assisted vulnerability identification, AI-generated malware, deepfakes, and business email compromise. 66% of incidents trace back to a supplier relationship. Train staff on AI-driven scams, verify communications, and review your third-party risk closely. S&P Global data shows Australian manufacturing weakened again in May. The PMI eased to 50.7 from 51.3, with new orders falling at their fastest pace in 7 months. Output price inflation hit its highest level since August 2022. S&P attributes a large share of this directly to the war in the Middle East, with international shipping delays lengthening to the second worst extent in nearly 4 years. A clean reminder that the Hormuz story we'll come to next isn't just a Gulf story. Further sources and references can be found in the footnotes of this podcast. But without further delay, let's look at our second threat update this week. The headlines will tell you the Hormuz crisis is winding down. There's a peace deal being signed in Switzerland this week. Brent crude has slipped back below $80. Markets are exhaling. But this is exactly the moment to stay alert. Because the Strait closing in March was never going to be a single crisis. It was a trigger event. And several of the crises it set off won't resolve when the tankers start moving again. This story is geopolitical with environmental and economic teeth, and it's about how one major event quietly seeds a series of smaller, slower burning ones. The headline crisis ends. The compounding ones outlast it by months, sometimes years. Just to ground us in the facts, when Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps closed the Strait on the 2nd of March, following the joint US and Israeli strikes on Tehran, roughly a fifth of the world's oil and a fifth of its LNG had to find another way out. Tanker traffic dropped by about 70% within 48 hours. Brent ran up from the low 70s to a peak near $120 a barrel in early March. The World Trade Organization recorded a 95% reduction in crude vessels and a 99% reduction in LNG vessels using Persian Gulf ports across the months that followed. Now, with a deal close, those numbers should start to normalise. But here's the part most coverage is missing. There are two compounding events already in motion that don't reverse when the deal is signed. First is in Doha. On the 18th and 19th of March, Iranian missiles struck Qatar's Ras Laffan facility, the largest LNG export plant in the world. 2 production trains were destroyed. Qatar Energy estimates the repairs will take 3 to 5 years. That's 12.8 million tonnes per annum offline, roughly 17% of Qatar's total export capacity, and around $20 billion in lost revenue. Even with the Strait reopening, this hit to global LNG supply is locked in for years, not months. Second is in the Pacific Ocean. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration upgraded to an El Niño advisory just last week. Conditions are present and the event is expected to strengthen into the 2026 to 27 Northern Hemisphere winter. There's a 1 in 3 chance it intensifies into a super El Niño between October and February. And here's the bit worth holding on to. The worst hydrological impacts of an El Niño typically arrive the year after onset. So the real Panama Canal pain isn't in 2026. It's in 2027. Right now, the canal is actually running well. 38 transits per day, Gatun Lake near maximum capacity after a strong wet season. And that's the trap. The route that absorbed all the Hormuz reroute traffic looks fine today. It can give us false confidence. The Panama Canal Authority itself is modelling drought scenarios actively for late 2026 and into 2027. Their long-term fix, the Rio Indio Reservoir, won't be operational until the early 2030s. There is no quick fix coming. So who's actually exposed? If you're a European LNG importer with long-term Qatari contracts, particularly utilities in Italy, Belgium or South Korea, your force majeure cover is real, but your spot market replacement cost is 20% or more above pre-conflict levels. That pressure stays through summer storage refill and likely into next winter. Italy's Edison has already had its force majeure extended into August. If you're an Asia-Pacific shipper who rerouted through Panama, you're probably okay through year-end, but if El Niño intensifies on schedule, your 2027 slots will be the first to get rationed. Container vessels held up reasonably well at 6 to 7 per day in the last drought, but draft restrictions cost real cargo on every transit. If you import from India, watch the monsoon closely. 7 out of 10 El Niño years have produced a poor Indian monsoon. Textiles, generic pharmaceutical inputs and agricultural commodities all face a constrained third quarter. The next would be Australian operators. El Niño typically brings drier conditions to eastern and southeastern Australia. Wheat, beef and irrigation-dependent horticulture will be looking at a tighter soil moisture window from August. Latin American operations relying on hydropower, around half of regional electricity supply comes from hydro. The Andes face a projected 0.6 to 1.7 percentage point GDP impact in a moderate to strong event. Brazilian coffee, Ecuadorian and Peruvian agricultural exporters carry real production risk. And insurers, this one is for you. War risk premiums on Gulf shipping may stay at 20 times pre-conflict levels for months, even after the ceasefire holds. Layer that against the parametric climate exposure building across agriculture, and you're stacking correlated exposure faster than most underwriting models currently recognise. So what do you do about this? We have 5 practical points. First, if you ship physical goods, book Panama Canal slots now for the fourth quarter of 2026 and the first half of 2027. The canal allows forward auction booking through its slot allocation system. Don't wait for the next NOAA update. Second, if you're an LNG buyer, audit your long-term Qatari contracts for Ras Laffan exposure. Run the maths on 3 years of partial supply, not 3 months, and review your force majeure clauses for cascading trigger language. Third, look further down your supply chain. The WMO and the World Bank both publish regional El Niño impact projections. Identify which of your Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers sit in high impact zones and contract alternative capacity now, while you still have leverage. Fourth, talk to your insurance broker about correlated exposure. War risk and climate parametric covers were typically written as independent risks. They no longer are. If you can demonstrate scenario planning that treats them as one, you may get better terms. Fifth, run a tabletop exercise this quarter, simulate Hormuz reopening Ras Laffan offline for 3 years, and Panama transits cut by 30%. That's not a stretch scenario. That's the consensus base case from the data we've reviewed for this episode. The lesson is simple. One crisis resolved does not mean we're in the clear. The Hormuz peace deal will be the headline. The real disruption now sits downstream of it, and it's a slower kind of damage. The kind that doesn't show up in next month's commodity prices, but is already showing up in the planning logs of the people paid to think about this stuff. We'll be diving deeper into the Panama Canal scenario and the LNG market reset in dedicated articles coming in the next fortnight.
That's it for today's update. If you need help navigating these threats or building a plan to protect your business, the same advisors who collate these insights are here to help. Head over to unbreakableventures.com to book a complimentary chat online with one of them. And if you found this resource useful, consider subscribing to Unbreakable Ventures or sharing the article with your network. After all, resilience is about community and communication. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay safe.
Unbreakable Ventures is brought to you by the Senior Advisory Team at Fixing, a boutique resilience advisory based in the Oceania, ASEAN and India regions. Special thanks to our sponsor and Europe's leading SaaS provider for resilience software, F24. Our resources are researched and published by industry specialists across New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia and the UK. This podcast provides advice and opinion on disaster recovery and the threat landscape. The content is not a substitute for expert guidance during a crisis. Unbreakable Ventures is trademarked by Fixing Consulting Partners, a Fixing Group company.